What I'd like to talk to you guys about today is how to fix your show up rates. What we find in running our agency over the last close to about a decade now is that a show up rate is something that is very underlooked and very underutilized. I think Alex Ramosi said this recently, but he said that you can choose to double closing rate or double show up rate. Both of them have the same effect financially on the business, which is twice as much revenue. But oftentimes it's a lot easier to fix show up rate than it is close rate because you're typically adding things that are automated and marketing based rather than changing a sales team, human beings that are subject to kind of these ebbs and flows and fluctuations in performance. So without further ado, let me talk to you guys about the 10 or so things that I think through when I'm trying to improve show up rate. Most of our clients have a show up rate that's about 50 to 70% after working with us for a few months. So without further ado, I'm going to go through the nitty gritty on exactly what we try and do to improve our prospects' show up rate. So number one, the first thing that we try and look at when we're trying to improve the show up rate is the pixel conditioning process. Okay, so what does that mean? We've talked a lot about the pixel conditioning strategies that we leverage here at westchannelmedia.com, but primarily this is going to be very important for people that are in lead generation businesses, not so much for e-commerce, but hear me out. Here's in essence the most important concepts that you have to understand. Right now on Meta, even Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, there's about 50 to 75,000 data points per every single user. I know you're saying to yourself, I haven't entered in 50 to 70,000 data points. Well, they're collecting data on you based on everything that you've ever engaged with, liked, watched, commented on. All of that is being curated and creating this user profile that the algorithms and the machine learning platform uses to predict your end user behavior. When you start running a paid advertising campaign, typically what you're going to notice is in the first 24 hours, your results are not that good. And then hours 48 to 72, you can have the sharp drop in your cost per result. And that is directly as a result of the algorithm becoming more optimized. Because what it's first doing is it's starting to see who is clicking on this ad. Then it's starting to see who is filling out the form. Then it's seeing who is actually completing the form and completing the next step, depending on what you tell it to do. And then what it's starting to do is once you have a conversion event, the pixel is going to say, okay, this person completed exactly what we want. Let's find people that have data points of the 50,000 that we've collected that are very similar to this individual. Okay, and that's the flywheel effect that makes paid advertising so profitable, is because it's very quickly able to find the common similarities between conversion events and trying to find more users that have similar buying behaviors, similar characteristics. Now, here's where the issue comes in. We know as people running service-based businesses or education-based businesses that not all leads are created equally. These algorithms are designed, they want to try and find you the cheapest cost per lead. They want to try and get you as most amount of leads as possible for the lowest cost per result. We see a lot of people that think Facebook's out to get them or they have some perverse incentive. And there's definitely a couple of recommended settings that I think Facebook pushes that have their interests ahead of the advertiser. But fundamentally, they do want you to get results so that you're incentivized to keep spending more money on the platform. And typically what's going to happen is that it's defaulting to the cheapest conversion that it can get, the cheapest lead that it can get. I'll give you another analogy of this on YouTube. I was recently listening to Iman Ghazi speak about his YouTube organic strategy. And once he uploads a video, what he's going to look for is the CPMs. And the CPMs are a measure of how much you're paying for 1,000 impressions for an advertiser to get on your video. Now, the more money that a particular audience has, the more advertisers want to show their ads to people that have money. One of the ways you're able to determine if your organic YouTube video is being shown to an affluent audience of buyers is what that CPM count is. Because sure, you can have a very viral video, but if the CPMs are very low, that doesn't guarantee that necessarily those people are going to be buyers for your business, okay? And just as an advertiser, you start to get very cheap CPMs and low cost per lead, that doesn't always result in actual buyers for your business. So really what you want to do if you're running a lead generation campaign, not just on Meta, but really any platform as a whole, is you want to try and figure out what is the right type of lead and make sure that the pixel only fires if it is that type of person. So let me give you an example of this. I was recently working with a client and they service real estate agents. They were selling a $5,000 per month offer to manage real estate agents' social media presence for them. Now, if you're familiar with the real estate space, and we have a lot of experience in the real estate space, okay, we've serviced hundreds of clients in that space, myself and my partners, and about 50% of real estate agents do about one deal per year. Okay, so they might make only a few $1,000s per year. It's kind of like this part-time side hustle thing for them. Somebody that is doing one deal a year is not going to spend $60,000 per year managing their content. You want to be working with the top 10% or the top 5% of real estate agents. You run an ad and say, hey, I want to help real estate agents, run their social media, and you just run a basic ad. You're going to get very, very cheap leads by default filling out that form. And you might have a lead cost of about $10 or $20 to $30. Okay. Instead, what we did for that particular account is we said, this business owner, we said, who is your ideal client profile? Don't just say real estate agents, get more specific. And what he said was it's real estate agents that have 5 active listings that do more than $100,000 per year in gross commission income. I said, great. So what you're going to do then is you're going to take that ICP, those defining characteristics, ask that on your landing page, and the pixel will only fire selectively if they meet that specific criteria. Now, what you're going to find is immediately your CPMs are going to raise from $10 to $50. Your cost per lead could raise tremendously, but now you're actually going to find that you now have a floor in terms of minimum lead quality. We have now set the floor as $100,000 in gross commission income. It doesn't mean that you'll get people that are $500,000 or $600,000 in gross commission income, but it's prioritizing, it's going after those people. Typically what we're going to do when we're working with any client is we're going to tier different application systems. So what we're going to find is that, let's say, so if we use the real estate example, we might find that real estate agents that report having more than $1 million $50,000 per year in gross commission income are tier 1 applications, and then a little bit lower than that is tier 2, and then tier 3, and then tier 4. Typically what you're going to find, and the reason that we grade and we categorize applications 1 through 4, is you're going to find there's different show up rates based on different tiers of applications. So you might find tier 1 has a show up rate of 75%, a close rate of 35%, an average cash collector rate that's going to have the highest conversion rate. If you increase the quality of your prospect, you're typically going to increase the quality of your business, okay? Now, that's not always the case, but most businesses, they just kind of lump all 4 of these applications together and just say my show up rate is X. When in reality, they should be asking themselves, what is my show up rate for tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4? What's the cost per lead for each of these different tiers? And then getting really clear on your marketing and your messaging and saying, how can we just attract more tier 3s and tier 4s? As you go up market, you're always going to pay a premium for lead costs. For this particular business owner that we worked in the real estate space, and we actually added about $70,000 to about $80,000 in monthly recurring revenue to his business over 6 months, is what we found is that the sweet spot for us was specifically that $100,000 per year gross commission income real estate agent. When we raised our floor in terms of lead quality to $200,000 per year in GCI, the lead cost became exorbitantly higher. If you become too restrictive to a platform like Facebook to where only the best of the best real estate agents ever get a pixel fire, then the algorithm starts to think, I don't know what you want from me. I'm doing everything for you. All these people are clicking on it, but no matter what happens, you never let the pixel fire. And if you look at Meta's advertising platform as a whole, the recommended guidelines are they want 30 to 50 pixel fires per week, I think, per ad set, because the platform can't optimize unless you tell it what it wants. The machine learning algorithm fundamentally needs feedback in order to improve. So if you're going to scale up the friction of your paid advertising spend, you might actually have to scale up the budget as well, because the cost per result is going to go higher because you're being more restrictive. So you need to raise your budget in order to get enough pixel fires in order for the machine algorithm to start doing its thing. So this is what we work with a lot of our clients. We're very fortunate now, after doing this for a decade in 20 different industries, we know where the sweet spot is in terms of lead quality. So that's number 1. That is pixel conditioning. Ask yourself, are you conditioning Facebook to go after the right type of lead or just any type of lead? Okay, secret number 2 to improving your show up rate is actually the VSL. We have a very methodical process that we work with clients to improving their VSL, but oftentimes what we find is there's this powerful downstream effect throughout the entire business that just improving something on the front end like a VSL actually can improve show up rates, average cash collected, because it changes the entire framing of the business. After they opt in and they schedule or they book a call, we highly recommend that you also embed a thank you page video that has social proof, testimonials, and adds more information that they can expect to get prior to that call. Typically what people are going to do is that in that first sitting, they're going to book the call, and then they're going to have, when they have more free time and they have more idle time, they're going to have the opportunity to consume longer pieces of content to learn more about your business. If you're not familiar with this channel, one of the biggest things that we do when we're working with clients is we ask ourselves, how can we increase the amount of content consumption that somebody consumes prior to getting on the phone with us so that that call feels like a 4th or a 5th call, not an intro call. And you can really have a much more substantive, meaningful conversation with somebody after they've consumed all that information. So it's very, very important that on that thank you page video, they receive emails and sequences linking them back to that thank you page video, because oftentimes right then and there, they're not going to have the opportunity or the ability to consume it right then and there. Versus if you send those emails and push them to their inbox, we usually recommend 1 to 2 emails per day in the first few days after booking a call. It's kind of sitting in their inbox. They're receiving those reminders that they need to watch this material before getting on the phone call. The probability, if we just keep bumping it and putting it in front of them, that they're going to do so goes up tremendously. Another thing that you can do to improve show up rates, this is a bit more advanced, is that you can actually create a custom audience of all the people on Facebook that have booked a call or have landed on the book a call page within the first 30 days. And you can run retargeting campaigns or engagement campaigns to nurture them. Okay. So I have a bunch of different mentors that have successfully taught me how to do this and implement this with my clients over the year. But this is very, very powerful to improve show up rates and also close rates on that call. You can do this with short form. You can do this with long form. You can also do this on other platforms. Just something as simple as $5 to $10 to $15 per day is usually very much sufficient to cover all the people that have opted in and booked calls within the trailing 90 days and just allow them to consume more content and get to know your business. The biggest issue with this strategy of retargeting the people that have booked calls is that oftentimes your audience size isn't big enough if you're just starting out. So you may have to expand the window of that custom audience. Maybe you want to go further back to collect leads from further back, or you want to add in different leads from other people that might be, in your sales process or long-term follow-ups. But just something to keep in mind, adding that $10 to $15 per day budget for all the people that book calls, that's a great way to kind of nurture them, warm them up, and get them excited to show up for that sales call. And just one pro tip, I want to give credit to Jeremy Haynes on this. Jeremy's been a mentor of mine for a very long period of time. What Jeremy will typically do and implement with a lot of his clients is that he'll embed hundreds of pieces of content or 30 to 50 pieces of content, and then he will then exclude people that have already watched that one specific piece of content for that particular audience. So then people are getting unique pieces of content served to them and not getting the same thing shown to their newsfeed over and over again. This can radically change the quality of lead and the quality of experience for a sales rep, for a frontline sales rep, and those prospects now have been hit by about 15 to 20 different touch points in a very short period of time. This is a very boring and kind of obvious thing, but we're typically typically going to add between about 3 to 5 reminders and appointment confirmation sequences on both SMS and email for people that have booked a call with our business. It sounds very obvious, but most people aren't doing this. And if they are doing it, they're not checking the email deliverability to see if those emails are actually landing in the inbox for a potential prospect. You can leverage something like OneSub, Calendly, or even the Go High Level native calendar. We prefer Calendly. We've just found it has the highest conversion rate from different scheduling softwares that we've split tested over the years. I find so many times that businesses spend too much time on the reminder sequences for the business and not enough time communicating the value of why they should show up to that phone call. Because fundamentally, if the phone call is valuable enough, they're going to show up for that. Okay. If it's very, very valuable, very important, you're going to remind yourself. You're going to put it in the calendar. Okay. So fundamentally, it's your job of your marketing, your VSL, and your thank you page to communicate the value of why they should show up to that call, what they have to gain by showing up to that call, and not just reminding them over and over and over again. It just becomes very annoying as time progresses. So that brings me directly to the next thing that I want to talk to you guys about and how to improve show up rate is how you are training the appointment setter. So in order to kind of illustrate this concept, I want to tell a quick story about when I was actually an in-house media buyer at a $25 billion fund in Beverly Hills, California. I was running the LinkedIn ads, the Facebook ads, and the Google ads for this company and doing the appointment setting for these particular financial advisors and fund managers and investment advisors. One of the biggest shifts that we made when we were improving our show up rate is when we changed the script of the appointment setter to add and elicit more curiosity as opposed to purging and explaining the investment thesis to the prospects who had opted in. So what the hell does that mean? So people would see an ad that, featured our investment philosophy, talked about our investment philosophy. And then for years, the appointment setters would constantly say, oh, we do this is our investment strategy, book a call with our team. And the show up rate was very, very low. When they asked me how I improved that, I actually changed the messaging on the script to elicit more curiosity and have the appointment setters who were actually very, very astute and very successful investors. I wanted them to play dumb until they had the prospect's undivided attention. So instead, we changed the script from here's all the things that we do, investment, closing the loop. I kept the loop very open. So what that script would look like is something along the lines of, hey, saw you filled out the form. Just as a reminder, we manage about $25 billion of assets under management. We've been rated now by Forbes as the best investment advisory firm in the country for the last 3 years. I think we're doing some really unique stuff here at the firm. Is there a time later this week when you'd be available to speak with an advisor? We could showcase our investment philosophy and go through a brief deck with you. And the people would say, oh, well, can you tell me a little bit about it? Like trying to bait them to kind of sell them on that. And there's a lot of people that if you said the word real estate, they immediately shut down. Oh, real estate don't work for me. I don't believe in that asset class. A lot of times there's trigger words for people. They'll just shut down immediately. Oh, I've done that before. But what you really want is you want to try and carve out people's undivided attention. You want to create people's undivided attention so you have the opportunity to break their beliefs because you're not going to break their belief fundamentally on an appointment setting call. So the appointment setters were actually instructed and they actually humbled themselves based on my instruction to say, I'm just actually the assistant to the advisor. In reality, these were very sophisticated investors. And they said, honestly, I'm not super familiar with the investment strategy. I can tell you about that as a high level of the firm, our background, our reputation, managing $25 billion under management, rated by Forbes each of the last 3 years being very successful. Do you have any time to speak with one of our senior partners later this week? And what do you think the show up rate did? It was like astronomically higher because people had something to gain now. I see so many times when I'm evaluating sales team, appointment setters, is that they're trying to pitch before they have a prospect's undivided attention. And that doesn't sound like a big deal. It sounds very obvious, but it's a huge deal because fundamentally, you're not going to break somebody's belief unless you have their undivided attention. It was a very intricate, detailed, complicated sales process. It required a 90-minute presentation up front, and then it was usually a 3 to 5 call close on the back end of that. So it was kind of silly to try and kind of satiate all their curiosity and try and sell them. Oftentimes, if you're doing an outbound dial from an appointment setter, they could be getting into their car, they could be driving their son to school. They're not in a relaxed setting where you have the opportunity to really unpack and break their beliefs. So the best thing you want to do is you don't want to sell the product, you sell the call. Okay, if you're in the advertising space and you run ads, your job isn't to sell your services in a 30-second ad. Your job is to sell the click. And then if you're the appointment setter, your job is to sell the call, is not to sell the investment opportunity or your product or service. Because actually selling it will actually lower your show up rate because it satiates their curiosity. So that is pretty much all I have for you guys today. That is the strategy that we use with all of our clients for managing hundreds of thousands of dollars per month profitably in paid advertising spend to improve their show up rates. Most of the clients are about 50 to 70%. If I had to summarize all of them, it's pixel conditioning is number one. Make sure your pixel is only firing when it's the right type of lead, not just any lead. Improve your VSL. I've seen that have very positive and powerful downstream impacts on the business and the show up rate long term. Have a thank you page video. Send daily email blasts that are not necessarily just reminder based, but are also providing value to sell them on the value of the call, not just reminding them of the call. You can also run a separate advertising campaign that targets the people who have booked calls and have them consume more content prior to getting on that sales call. We talked about segmenting your applications into tier 1 through 4 and then noticing if there's a discrepancy between show up rate, close rate, average cash collected. Oftentimes moving up market will solve your show up rate issue and actually lead to better consequences downstream in the business as well. So, higher close rates, higher average cash collected. And then lastly, if you do have an appointment setter, remember his job is to necessarily sell the call. It is not to necessarily sell the opportunity. Okay, you want that person person to be playing dumb, to kind of add a few kind of curiosity provoking elements to his pitch. We help our clients kind of pioneer this script oftentimes when they're working with us. You want to think very carefully about what information you're revealing, because that might be the very thing that actually prevents them from the need for showing up for that sales call. So that is pretty much everything that I have for you guys today. My name is Sam Sauter. If you're interested in having us grow your business through LinkedIn ads, Facebook ads, Google ads, YouTube ads, and you're doing more than $50,000 to $100,000 per month in revenue, you can apply to work with us below. If you're doing less than that in revenue, still worthwhile to book a call. You might be speaking with myself or somebody else on our team. You might be a good fit for some of our mentorship programs or done with you stuff. Most of the clients that are working with us in the agency space are doing between $200,000 and $300,000 per month on average. Our biggest clients are doing a few $1 million per month. If you think you're qualified, regardless, fill out your contact information below. I hope that was helpful for you guys. I look forward to speaking with you soon, and have a great rest of your day. Thanks.